Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the New Fashion Conservatives. I'm Justin Phillips, and with me today, Scott Allen. Scott is running for mayor for the city of Waukesha. Scott served as an alderman on Waukesha City Council. He served on the Waukesha County Community Development Block Grant Board, and for the last 11 years, he has represented Waukesha in the state legislature. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah. So just start us off. Tell us about your campaign. How's it been going so far? And what are you hearing on the doors?
Well, there's a variety of things I'm hearing. I think that the campaign's going well. We're engaging with the voters. We've been engaging for several months now, and getting good feedback. They are wanting some change. They are anxious for change in Waukesha. They have seen a city adrift over the last 8 years, and they know that Waukesha is a great community, and we haven't stepped into our greatness. And I think that's what people are hoping for. But we need true leadership for that. And so I think that the folks are responding quite well when I have a chance to talk to them and meet with them.
It's awesome. So how do you think your assembly experience tracks to becoming the mayor?
Well, it's not so much about becoming the mayor. It's about the continuing service in a different dimension. I think that, one of the things that we all know is that Waukesha County and Waukesha City are donor locales, meaning we send more in income tax and sales tax to the state government than we get back in shared revenue distribution. It's an unfair situation. It has persisted for decades. We had a recent revision a couple of years ago in the shared revenue distribution. Waukesha did get more. Waukesha County did get more, but it was a pittance compared to what so many other communities got. There are it's sort of a bipolar situation where very large communities get a large amount of state aid, and with the recent revision, a lot of our rural communities gained significantly in the state aid formula. But those communities in the middle, like Waukesha or Waukesha County, for instance, they're left behind. And so I think my experience in the state legislature, gives me the knowledge, the insider knowledge, the inside baseball knowledge of what's going on with that distribution and how to communicate effectively about it. But secondly, I have the relationships within the legislature. Sure, there's going to be some new faces, but a lot of the same faces are going to be coming back this fall that are going to be making decisions about those shared revenue distributions in the future. I have those relationships and the knowledge. So if Waukesha is due a greater share of that revenue, I think I'm best positioned to maybe make that persuasive argument.
Yeah, that's right. I think actually for a brief period, you were my state representative. Yeah. I'm actually not even sure if I got a chance to vote for you because of the way the maps, how quickly the maps shifted. But yeah, I remember we met at the Sunnyside Cafe several years ago. So I appreciate you taking the time then as now and giving me some advice then that I think I've actually been able to parlay into what I'm doing here. So yeah, 11 years in the state legislature is, a solid amount of time and definitely gives you the connections and the knowledge base to again articulate the concerns of the city at the state level. So talk about some of your priorities that once you get into office. I know you've talked about housing, talked about retiring the city's debt, economic development. I'll let you just start with which one and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we've got a series of issues that have compounded to create the present circumstance where we are financially challenged in the city. We mentioned the shared revenue distribution. That's one component, and it's a significant one, no doubt. But also we have a situation where Waukesha's history has been one of growth and growth and growth and sustained growth over time until we reached 2010 and our growth flatlined. That's not unlike many other communities, but it's really about how we adapt to that changing environment. We've got to be much more aggressive as a city in pursuing growth, and we have to grow our way out of our financial challenges. Unfortunately, over the last 8 years, the city has doubled its debt. I've never figured out a way in my personal life how to borrow my way to prosperity. It just isn't possible. Some people have said, well, it's good to borrow debt when the interest rates are low. Perhaps that's true, but we have to have the ongoing revenue stream to be able to pay that debt back. I mean, that's something you should always account for. It doesn't matter how low the interest rates are. If you don't have the ongoing revenue stream to pay that debt back, you shouldn't pursue that debt. So that also contributes to our financial challenges. Last May, our city administrator projected that the city of Waukesha could be facing an $8 million deficit by 2027. So we've got a serious challenge in front of us, and it's going to take somebody with the resolve, with the commitment, with the experience and the wisdom to figure out how to get us out of it.
Yeah, that's really solid. So I'm looking, just you have on your website, was looking before jumped on about Vision 2030. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Well, Waukesha's, I think, never accomplished its fullest potential. It is a great community in a great location, and we ought to celebrate its greatness and just embrace it, put it on us, and wear it as a proud community. We've got so much to offer. We have one of the youngest demographics in southeastern Wisconsin, which is great for employers. So employers should be, if they're looking to locate anywhere, they should be looking to locate as close to Waukesha as possible. Not only that, but we've got a beautiful Fox River going through our city. We've got wonderful parks that align along that river. We've got a beautiful river walk. We've got a fantastic historic downtown Waukesha with architecture that rivals any place in the Midwest. We've got so many advantages, and yet we're just sort of just getting by. And I plan to celebrate those advantages, brag about them everywhere I go, and make sure people know how great Waukesha is. We need a top salesperson to promote Waukesha if we're going to grow, and that'll help us through our financial challenges as well. But that's the vision, is to just celebrate our greatness, to protect and preserve the charm that we have, and just augment it and enhance it.
Yeah, you're right. I think, Waukesha has a lot of cool opportunities. Someone who lives a little further west in Waukesha County, I kind of forget that I can go into Waukesha to hang out. I think I've seen you at some YR events downtown Waukesha. I was able to attend the Charlie Kirk event that was at one of the larger parks there. I forget the name. My only hang up is I feel like it was designed to deflect an invading army. Streets kind of go every direction, and you get turned around really easily. But it's a really good community. So you got Carroll College right there as well. You're right, a lot of opportunities for growth.
Yeah, those streets that go everywhere give you lots of fun time to explore.
Yes, yeah. I think I'm heading in east or west, and I'm coming out north or south, and all three of my kids were born at Waukesha Memorial Hospital, and one of the things I love there is going to Sobelman's, and you're grabbing pizza from downtown. That was my wife and I, when we first had our first, and subsequently always had pizza dates at the hospital. So it is a really nice community. But I do want to ask this one thing. It's on your website. So is there a rat problem in Waukesha? Is that?
Well, there has been.
Okay.
We've got city problems just like any other city. One of those challenges that many cities struggle with is the presence of rats. And I'm not afraid to address issues head on and say, look, we've got to work together on solving this problem. There's no one policy solution that's going to address the issue. We have to have responsible citizens that are going to do the right thing to make sure that we're keeping our rat population under control. It is what it is, and we're going to make sure that we continually address the issue.
Yeah, that's I would never have necessarily thought of that as a campaign platform, but definitely, glad you're thinking big and small as whatever the size of a hole that a rat can fit into. And you're right, beautifying Waukesha is something should be a priority. I love the river walk, the Fox River down there. I've done the Alzheimer's walk there a couple times. So yeah, just tell us, what do you think about beautifying Waukesha? You have plans for that?
Well, it's the little things, you see. I mean, when we talk, the reason I'm talking about the rat situation on my website, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, because it's the little things. One bad impression can send somebody away and never come back. I had an opportunity to go to the Oktoberfest this last fall at Frame Park. My wife and I parked downtown, walked to the Oktoberfest celebration. After it was over, we walked back along the Fox River Walk. Unfortunately, along that route, I discovered a number of the lamp posts along the Fox River Walk were out. So I went back a couple weeks later, and I actually did an inventory of all the lights from Barstow Street to Marland. And I found that nearly a third of all the lights were out, were not operational. Well, that does not leave a good impression on a visitor coming to Waukesha. So if we're talking about beautifying Waukesha, we've got to take care of the basics first. It's like when Vince Lombardi first met with the Green Bay Packers, he held up a football and he said, "Gentlemen, this is a football," illustrating the importance of, we're going to take care of the basics, the fundamentals first and foremost, before we do the fancy things. So that's how we build a beautiful city is one street at a time, one block at a time, one neighborhood at a time, making sure we're doing the small things right.
I love that. That's fantastic. I don't think many candidates would think that way. That you're right. You just to see how many lights are out. I would never thought that. Again, those small things. But you're right. It absolutely matters so much for your community, and right that pride, that civic pride you have, and it comes from a leader that's willing to take on even the smallest issues.
Yep.
So, do you want to take a minute to talk about your opponent, because there is a stark difference between, I think, your philosophy, your political alignment, and hers. And I'm going to open it up from there. I know she is a far left progressive that I think is out of step with the voters in Waukesha. But again, that's my opinion. Tell us how you differ from her.
I had a communication with a constituent just recently, a voter, and I pointed out that she cannot go unchecked in her partisanship. This is a nonpartisan election. We should be campaigning in a nonpartisan way, talking about the issues that are present in Waukesha. At every opportunity, my opponent has attached herself to the Democratic Party. On every single one of her Facebook posts, for instance, she's hashtagging the Democrats every single time. So she's not afraid to run on that partisan side. The challenge, though, is that it's not. She's more than a Democrat. See, she's endorsed by an organization called the Working Families Party, which is effectively they're socialists. They have endorsed people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. Bernie Sanders said this is the closest party that represents my vision of socialist democratic philosophy. So she's way out in the left wing, but she's, you look at her website, you look at her campaign material, she's trying to run as this, innocent, independent alder person just trying to do good for the community. I think, I've got a well-established record. I'm not hiding from my conservative nature. I'm proud of what I've done in the legislature. Certainly those who are on the far left side of things are going to be opposed to me. But I don't want people to think that she's somehow innocent of partisanship. She's anything but. And, if we want to have that debate, I'm more than happy to have that conversation over ideology. But I think what's more important is the future of Waukesha, its financial sustainability, the maintenance of its roads, the cleanliness of its parks, things like that. I think those are the things that we should be thinking about in a mayoral election.
Yeah, I think we've seen that from the highest levels down to, again, mayoral races and city council, that people will run as again, maybe Democrats or moderates, independents, but they're really just Trojan horses for every progressive, far left socialist policy that they can kind of squeeze in. And so let's talk a little bit about public safety. So you've been endorsed by both the police chief and the outgoing Waukesha County sheriff. And I think that really speaks to, again, what your vision is for a safe Waukesha as opposed to, again, maybe your opponents.
Yeah, just to be clear, in my last election for the assembly, I was endorsed by the Waukesha County Chief of Police Association.
Sure.
The police chief in Waukesha himself is a public servant and therefore does not endorse. He's an employee of the city of Waukesha, does not endorse. I just want to make that clear. I have been endorsed by a former sheriff, longtime former sheriff, Arnie Moncada, as well as the current sheriff, Eric Severson. I'm also very honored by the endorsement of District Attorney Leslie Basie. These folks have given me their endorsement and the Police Chief Association in the past because they know I have a strong record in favor of the police, in favor of public safety, in favor of supporting our district attorney's office and our court system. I was the author of an important bill this term that has passed and will be going to the governor soon, AB 320, which would properly fund our court system for many, many years to come to make sure it operates at efficient levels. These things are important if we're going to make sure our streets are safe. I was also a co-author of the constitutional amendment that passed overwhelmingly a couple years ago that would allow judges to consider threat to public safety in assigning bail. That was an important constitutional amendment. And the far left was opposed to that because they want to release criminals right and left, have our streets walking around on our streets, these folks that deserve to be locked up. I passed an important bill that addressed drug overdose deaths. Those that are dealing drugs that result in overdose deaths, they were treated as somehow more gently than any other reckless homicide. And we passed a parity bill that got that up to speed. So over and over and over again, I've supported policies that make sure that public safety is our top priority of government. It has always been the top priority of government. And if I'm elected mayor, it will be the top priority of City Hall.
That's awesome. No, I think that resonates a lot with, me, our listeners. Having safe communities is definitely important. And when you have DAs and a criminal element from the city of Milwaukee that starts to bleed west, I know it's frustrating for, a lot of voters. So yeah, I think that's definitely important. And then can you talk a little bit more? So spent 11 years in the state assembly now. Do you have any other bills I think that really stand out that would help Waukesha or that you got through that's good for the community?
Sure. A couple. I'll just talk about a couple that I've recently passed. I was a co-sponsor on. I've co-sponsored hundreds of bills that have gotten across the finish line, but a couple that have recently passed that I think are important. One is ankle bracelets for homeless sex offenders. The governor just signed that into law, and we have a sex offender registry so that when a sex offender is released, they have to be registered so that we know their whereabouts. And that registration means this is where they live, so people can be aware. In fact, even in real estate transactions, we disclose the presence or the existence of that registry so that homeowners or would-be homeowners can look that up to see where registered sex offenders are, if I can spit those words out. The trouble was, if somebody's homeless and they're a sex offender, there's no place to register them. And so this law that just got signed by the governor will require them to wear ankle bracelets so that we know their whereabouts, so that police can monitor their whereabouts. I think this is an important measure for public safety. If they go into a sensitive zone, like a school zone, that would notify the police department and they could respond with surveillance and figure out what's going on. So that's an important one. Another one that has been around in the legislature a couple of years, and I know there's some disagreement on this one, but I'm a proud co-sponsor of the bill. We've got a number of DACA residents. These are the dreamers. They came in under Obama as children. They were children of immigrants, undocumented immigrants under the Obama administration. And they were allowed certain privileged status. Well, those DACA kids have grown up in our schools. They're friends with all of our kids, and they've done well. They've worked hard. They've followed the dream. And now we had a bill that we had a situation in Wisconsin where we would not allow them to get a professional credential. So they could get a high school diploma. They could go to college and get a degree, maybe in nursing or something like that. And they were being forced to go to other states, neighboring states, to get employment when we need them working right here in Wisconsin. This was an important bill that we passed and the governor signed into law that now allows those kids, those dreamer kids, to be able to work in our community, the very communities that they grew up in, whether it's working as a nurse or working as anything that would get a professional license. We've allowed that. And so I'm very happy that that's passed. I worked with Representative Ortiz-Velez in getting that done. She was instrumental in helping to make that happen. She's been a great bipartisan partner in the legislature. It's been a pleasure to work with her.
I was just going to bring that up. It shows that even as you're a conservative, but you're willing to work across the aisle. You're working in a bipartisan fashion means you're getting the right solutions, not necessarily partisan ones, but ones that benefit the whole community.
Right.
So, and then I want to ask, you are a small business owner, and so what do you think? How does that experience kind of translate into being both the state legislature and then running for mayor?
Yeah, I think that I prefer people in terms of people I vote for. I prefer people to have some business experience because it gives them a dose of reality. It gives them a sense of what everyday people are facing, the challenges that they're facing. Having that business experience gives me ultimately a bottom line perspective. I know how to make an operation successful. You have no choice in business. If you don't make it successful, you don't survive. You don't thrive in the business. And so it's a matter of making sure that the objectives are clear, making sure that we are focused on the costs as well as the potential revenue involved, making sure that those books balance and that you come out ahead at the end of the day. Government can use that same principle. At the end of the day, our city government has to have a balanced budget, which means that the revenue has to offset all of the expenses. We can't operate like the federal government and operate under a deficit and continue to just borrow money and borrow money. We have no choice but to make sure that our books are balanced. And so we have to look at it from a program perspective. Each program has to survive on its own, in my opinion. Many people call it in government a zero-based budgeting approach, where we start from square one and justify any dollars spent rather than square 100, where we're already spending this much and we want to spend more. We have to justify it every year in business from square one, from dollar one. And I think that's the business perspective that I think we need. In government, we need more business professionals in government to make those prudent decisions and not just pie in the sky.
I definitely agree. I mean, it's really easy when you're in, state or local government to just kind of see a cost increase or vote a pay increase and be like, oh, it's deserved or it's worth it, or because someone's telling me it is. But yeah, starting with that zero base, starting with asking why you're spending what you're spending, and getting down into it is definitely something I appreciate as well. So definitely big fan of that. So we do have a couple questions that we like to ask every one of the guests that come on this show. So the first one is, if you could pick a Wisconsin spot, whether it's a supper club, maybe a brewery, Packer game, tailgate, to hold a voter rally, where would it be, and what would it look like? What are you talking to voters about?
Well, they would never allow it, but I would want to have a voter rally on the campus lawn of Carroll University. Number one, it's right in Waukesha. Mm-hmm. But number two, it's the oldest four-year higher education institution in the state of Wisconsin. It's got, again, the beautiful architecture. So I love to tell the story about our local community. And it's a beautiful campus with a beautiful campus lawn. I'd love to see a voter rally on that campus. And what I would be talking with voters about is the need for small government. How important small government is, that we keep government in check, that government, when it grows too big, becomes too problematic. It inhibits growth. It inhibits prosperity. And so I would love to have a rally on the Carroll University campus promoting the idea of smaller government.
Oh, you are right. It is actually a very, very nice campus. I couldn't agree more.
It's spectacular.
So growing up or serving in Wisconsin, what's one lesson from the state, whether it's family farm or a small town festival or a hunting trip, that shapes your conservative approach to leadership?
So in my younger years, I lived in a small town in northern Wisconsin called Tomahawk. It's near Rhinelander, north of Wausau. Beautiful community. And every year when I was a kid, my parents would take us down for the downtown for the 4th of July celebration. We'd, of course, have, watch the parade. We'd have the corn roast. There'd be a carnival in town that we'd watch the 4th of July fireworks. And it just, that idea, that image, that memory for me still crystallizes in my mind just how great our country is. We live in the greatest country of all time, not just of the world today, but the greatest country that's ever existed. And I think we need to start with that and celebrate that we've got so many abundant opportunities that nobody else, people around the world for decades and decades and decades, they all want to come here. There must be a reason for that. There must be a reason why everybody wants to come here. And we should, number one, we should protect that, to protect what it is that makes this country special, and celebrate it. And it amazes me when people say that, that the national anthem or the United States flag is a triggering mechanism, that somehow that it offends people when they hear the national anthem or when they see people waving the flag. It offends them. It just amazes me that nowhere else will you find the abundant opportunities that are here. In fact, it's kind of funny to me because so often we hear these people criticizing the country and criticizing the president, whoever the president is. I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican. If they're president of the United States, I'm proud of them as president, and I want them to do well. But to hear people say, this is, they want to complain about the country, but then, and they say, well, if this person's elected, I'm going to move. And then they never move. Mm-hmm. Like they stay here. There must be some reason for that. So to me, it was just that experience as a kid made me want to celebrate this country. I guess maybe it ended up inspiring me to enlist in the military when I was 18 years old. And, and maybe it's the reason why I'm still serving today, because I want to serve this country because of the greatness of what it is and what it's offered me. Yeah,
reminds me of something my dad said when we would sit down and watch the nightly news when I was in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and there was a lot of the Cuban refugee crisis was going on, and my dad would always say there's people who are dying to get into this country, but no one's dying to get out.
Yeah.
So just to follow up, I was not aware you served in the military. Tell me a little bit, what branch, and just a little.
Yeah, at 18 years old, I signed up to serve in the United States Army Reserve, a 6-year term. It was the peaceful mid-'80s. Ronald Reagan was president. We had a couple minor skirmishes, but that was about it. Never really any kind of deployment, except in my very last year. It was interesting because my term expired in April of '89. And I think in June of '89, Saddam Hussein rolled in and attacked Kuwait. By August of '89, the unit that I was a part of was called up. The 349th General Hospital was called up to active duty to go over there. And by the end of August, the skirmish was over.
Yeah.
So, it was weird because watching that summer, watching it unfold on TV, it was, I had these mixed feelings because on the one hand, I was like, well, I'm glad my term is over. On the other hand, I felt like, well, I should be there. It was like this tug of war was going on in my heart. I was relieved when, it had been accomplished so quickly and resolved so quickly. to know that I wasn't somebody that maybe should have been there. I mean, I had completed my term, but just these mixed feelings was something else.
No, 6 years is a good commitment. That's more than just about anyone. So,
well, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a pretty small percentage. I think it's like less than 10% of the country's population has ever worn a uniform for the country. So,
yeah. And then finally, so first day as mayor, you get to wave a magic wand to either set a day one policy or roll back a progressive policy in the city. And this is without worrying about getting votes or anything like that. What was that? What's that day one policy going to be for you?
Well, as I said earlier, Waukesha has had a history of very strong growth until we got to about 2010. And so we as human beings tend to be reactive in nature. And so when we see rapid growth, we want to put it in check. Our zoning laws are designed to restrict growth. And so decade after decade after decade, Waukesha has adopted practices that would restrict or inhibit growth. And now that the accumulation of those policies are coming to hurt us. And so on day one, I would like to unrestrict that growth. And I would like to go back and renew or revisit all of those restrictive measures that we put in place through our zoning code and our zoning practices, and renew it and refresh it and say, Waukesha's open, we want to grow, we want development. That's really sort of what we're going to be working on. I won't accomplish it on day one, but we're going to be busy on it. And to Waukesha's credit, our planning department there has already undertaken a process of community surveys, and they've employed people to help with a more sort of outlook on the future, a futuristic outlook to say we need to adapt. So they're doing some of those things already, and they've made some progress, but there's maybe a lot more that we need to do.
Fantastic. And then final question, where can people go to find out more information?
Well, scottforwaukesha.com, easy to remember, all spelled out, scottforwaukesha.com. We need help. We need people to contact voters via phone, knock on doors, drop lit. We can take all the help we want. If you're so inclined to give a donation, we'll take that too.
Fantastic. Well, wishing you the best, Scott. I know you're going to be a great mayor for the city of Waukesha, and we're looking forward to having you on again when you're the mayor and updating us on all the progress in growth and retiring the city's debt. So thank you for taking the time today.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another very special episode of the New Fashion Conservatives. I'm Justin Phillips, and with me today is Matt Rosek. Matt is running for mayor in the city of Oconomowoc. He has been a city council member for 12 years, on top of being a lawyer and a volunteer fighter. So he has a lot of cool experience. Looking forward to talking with him. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's just start it off. Why you're running, and tell us how the campaign's been going.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think the campaign's been going great. I think there's a lot of momentum behind my mayoral run. The main reason I'm running is I just love this community. I've spent pretty much my entire life in this area. My wife and I grew up just on the outskirts of the city, moved in when we got married in 2001. I mean, heck, I met my wife in downtown Oconomowoc at the old gazebo in 1995. We're raising our 4 kids here. And bottom line is we love this community, and we really want to see a strong, bright future for Oconomowoc. There's a lot that makes our city great, and I'm committed to make sure our city remains vibrant. And look, there's pressures in every city in our communities right now and everywhere across the state. But for me, one of the big things is high taxes, unnecessary debt, and destructive policies that can harm our future. Raising 4 kids in the city it's really important that, we have a strong, vibrant community in the future and somewhere special where my kids can grow up and hopefully move back to someday.
Yeah, it's awesome. Living just south of you, I know how much the communities are interconnected, and you're right, having that vibrant downtown Oconomowoc is a real blessing to have. So you also had a lot of folks come to volunteer for your campaign. That has to feel pretty cool too.
Yeah, the last several weekends I've had pretty large groups. By 3 weeks ago, I had 13 folks out. This last weekend, I had 25 total out and about in the community knocking on doors. I've gotten through nearly 5,000 pieces of door hangers, along with all the signs and everything else. So it's been great. It's really fun to see a lot of young people out too. The last round of folks that came out, I had some kids in high school that came out to help. They were 17. They want to get involved in politics, and they thought this would be a great way to help out a local candidate.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And yeah, when you get that many people knocking doors for you, it's got to feel good and means you're doing the work that you need to win the race. So I think you touched on it just to start, but public safety and fire rescue services are a big part of the community and budgeting. You've been a volunteer firefighter, so I'd love to hear some stories from that. But now, as a city council member, can you share your thoughts on the direction of public safety and fire rescue in the city of Oconomowoc?
Sure. So I used to be a volunteer firefighter and EMT, actually in one of our neighboring communities, Ixonia. Did a lot of my ride-alongs and clinical stuff actually in the downtown Oconomowoc station, which is where I met, former Chief Glenn Lydell and a lot of those firefighters back in the older days. Public safety is such a big deal. And the biggest way I think, support our public safety men and women is smart budgeting. To me, it's all about smart budgeting. If you waste your money on other projects, if you're taking out too much debt for things that don't need to be done, and you ignore those core services, roads, utilities, police, and fire, those groups are going to suffer. And so for me, the best way we support those folks, those men and women that are, on the lines working at 2 a.m. to protect our families, is smart budgeting and being a good, strong fiscal conservative.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Fiscal responsibility has to be a key issue in the race. And can you expand on your philosophy there and how it sets you apart from maybe the prior mayor or your opponent?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've done since I've been on council is always have a really sharp eye on the budgets. I'm the only person on council right now that's actually voted against past budgets that overspent. Either raised taxes too high or spent too much money or frankly wasted money. And that's a big difference also between me and my current opponent. She has pushed avidly a wheel tax, not once, but twice. She recently, just in March, voted for an additional $850,000 in debt for downtown public bathrooms in the middle of Village Green that nobody wanted. And then just last week voted to extend a TID, the downtown TID number 4, for another year to pocket that money, for essentially affordable housing studies of some kind or another. That was money that could, and we closed it. She was the lone vote. And that money was money that was going to go to the county, CTC, the school districts, and back to the city. For our city, it was around $220,000 extra that we could use for, pick a street, fix a street, buy another cop car, buy a salt truck. It could really mean immediate debt relief or relief to our regular folks paying taxes every day.
Yeah, I know that's especially when you get in that city budgeting. It's mostly, if not all, fire rescue and public works for the budget. That's like a majority, if not complete majority.
Yeah, if you add in fire and police and then your public works, you're probably, 75, 79%, somewhere in that line every year.
Mm-hmm.
Give
and
or
those
take.
are things that you have to fund regardless,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Speaking of a little bit about this, the area around here is growing like crazy right now. I know we're getting a Costco. So can you talk about your vision to, manage the growth and expansion of businesses and housing in the city while, preserving the small town charm? I know that's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, especially with, longtime residents of the village. So tell us what your take on, that small town charm and the managing the growth.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple competing interests. One, you have people's personal private property rights to develop and use their land as they see fit within the law, and then you have the community interest in maintaining kind of that charm that drew people here to begin with. And balancing that is important. I mean, to me, I've called it as one of my pillars, responsible development, which to me means sensible growth that increases the tax base, brings goods and services folks want, but work within those developers. I'm one of the few guys on council that has really held developers accountable. I've asked them to come back for projects if they're not right. Recently did that with that Harvest development. They came back initially with 720 apartments. That was it, all rentals. And I'm okay with some rentals, but we sent them back to the drawing board. I told them I would not vote for that project if they didn't fix it, add in some more affordable single family housing, some condominiums, more owner occupied, added trails and some green space. And those are the type of things we have to do, is hold those developers accountable. On the flip side of that, when development is good and it's right. So we redid Olympia a while back. We granted some TID money. We allowed those folks to redevelop what was a really blighted area. And some of the really big positives was like the VA clinic. We have a lot of veterans in the area. And I've spoken with some of those men and women recently who are thrilled that we have a VA clinic there. So they don't have to drive all the way to the Zablocki Medical Center downtown in order to just see their doctor, for a 20 or 30 minute appointment. So those are the pros and cons. I think we need to hold those developers accountable, but there are some things people want to see in the area, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that area around the Olympia ski hill is really incredible. I think when it was originally Olympia, there's a lot of trees, and you really didn't understand how big the area was and how far back it went. And that development's pretty big, but it looks very nice, and it's successful for the area.
For sure. No, for sure.
Yeah, you got not just the VA, but a Chipotle now too. You got a Panera.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like Chipotle. We got a First Watch coming. I like all those spots too. Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, those are things that people do want to see come to the area. And just one more little piece on the development. I mean, our downtown's going to kind of always be downtown. It's going to always remain, small, charming. But some of the projects that have happened down there over the years, including the redevelopment of the downtown, fixing the roads and fixing the sidewalks, that was a massive undertaking. Our downtown was dead 15 years ago. 15, 20 years ago, there was nothing going on. You now have folks that live down there in some of those buildings. There's a lot of walkability potential. I voted to stop that Fowler Lake Village. It was probably 12 years ago now. There was the swap with Fowler Lake Village wanted to build on the lakefront, which is where our parking lot and the park and the boardwalk is. And I led the effort to stop that, move that building across the street, and keep that area open for future generations. And then we put in the boardwalk, and now we're redoing Village Green, giving people that really cool spot to gather, hang out with their family, have a lunch on the lake that, otherwise you wouldn't be able to enjoy.
Yeah, that is a great area, great entertainment district. You talk about, Mullins just moving in there fairly recently, Wine Maniacs relocating there a couple of years ago, and North 48. I've been to all those places too. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So before we move on from talking about development, can you tell the story of the Rock Garden? I really like it. And I want listeners to hear a little bit about this.
Sure. Well, there was an old building there, actually kind of several buildings together. The buildings were ripped down. A group of folks bought those buildings to put a condo building there with retail and a restaurant. The first vote was passed, I think 3 years ago now, but they weren't able to ultimately finance that building. They came back with a second project. On the council floor, I said, look, if we don't vote for this, we're going to have a rock pile here for 2 years. And that's exactly what we've had. That last vote was a tie vote on the council, with the current mayor breaking the tie to defeat the measure. Since then, I've had some discussions, and I continued to discuss what can happen there. After I'm mayor on April 8th, that's one of the first people I'm going to get on the phone with and try to get something happening there. That area used to be, if you look back at the early 1900s, there was a big hotel there that actually had piers that went out into the lake where people could drive their boats up. We're not going to do anything of that scale in that spot, but I think finding something that's architecturally significant, working with the developers to match up, finish the boardwalk, for instance, try to get a restaurant on the edge of the lake and some more retail, and then some more folks living downtown, I think will make us even more vibrant down there.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I have worked on a major regional project, and in doing so, I really came to appreciate your thought process and the collaborative efforts. So can you talk a little bit about that experience or the additional experiences that will set you up for success as a mayor, and how you view regional collaboration? Because, you're the one I hear about that from, and certainly not your opponent.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's always a pleasure working with Summit and a lot of our neighbors. One of my initiatives I call the Lake Country Initiative, which is really, I have a really strong eye to work with the folks around us, and for all sorts of things. Right now, we're in collaboration with Summit, Village of Lac La Belle, Dousman, Ottawa, and other folks on Western Lakes Fire District. And I think that's been wildly successful in reducing our costs overall, and providing additional services that otherwise we wouldn't have. Before the city joined Western Lakes, we didn't have full-time paramedics in town. I mean, a lot of people don't know that. Just 6-7 years ago, we didn't have full-time paramedics. We were hiring Western Lakes to bring us paramedic services. So those type of collaborations are huge. And look, I've developed relationships with not only you, but folks in a variety of our neighbors: Delafield, Heartland, Village of Lac La Belle, former members of the Old Town, folks that live in Oconomowoc Lake. We have a lot of small communities around here, and I think we should start figuring out a way that we can kind of join forces on different things. And one of my examples I've always used is salting. Let's start out with something simple. Why do we all buy separate salt for salting our roads? Why don't we get together and buy it all together? Even if we only save $3 or $4 grand a year, why don't we start out? We're all salting our roads. Some of us literally stop on roads that we share and stop salting and turn around and go the other way. Why are we doing that? Why don't we work more closely together on some of these things? And, I think it's worth a discussion. Whether we ultimately join forces on a lot of things, it's going to depend on, finances and costs and our ability to collaborate. But I think there's some potentials there that we could explore.
That's definitely true. I know from where I live, the main street that I go out from is on the east side is the city. The west side is the village. And over this past summer, there was a deer that got hit, and it was on the city side. But I called the village and said, hey, can our DPW guys maybe just move this somewhere? And then I told them where it was, and they said, oh, we're going to have to call the city. It was taken care of at some point. But there's definitely a something about the who was in charge of collecting that animal. So definitely something to think about. So the last big question for you, I do want to know, what do you think is the biggest separator between you and your opponent? I know this race has gotten a surprising amount of attention. You've landed endorsements from conservative leaning groups, WIS Red and whatnot. So, what separates you the most from your opponent? What makes you the ideal candidate?
Well, I think it's kind of back to my slogan: consistent, experienced, and conservative. I have a conservative bent to my vision on tax policy, public safety, transparent government, and development. I'm not going to rubber stamp these things. And some of those conservative groups that are supporting me are because my local values align with them on things like tax policy. That continues to be, I think, one of the biggest parts of this race is the difference in tax policy. My opponent not only proposed the wheel tax, she brought the information forward and suggested $25 per car. For my family, right now, we have 3 cars in our house. That's an extra $75 a year just because someone thought it was a bright idea. The recent debt spend that my opponent voted on just last spring in March, would have amounted to $12 to $15 per household for another 10 years. You start adding these things up, and it's a tax policy that I do not think matches with actual fiscal conservative values in this area. And I think that's really it's going to be a defining part of the race. The TID closure that I talked about, I think early on too, leaving that TID open and extending it for another year and pocketing the $600K. It's just something that we shouldn't be doing. We never promised the voters when we did that tax incremental district that we were going to keep the money at the end for another year and not give it back to the schools, not give it back to CTC and the county and our own taxpayers. So I'm looking at ways that I can keep hardworking families, retirees, people on fixed incomes in their houses. We talk about affordability. One of the easiest way to make things affordable from a municipal perspective is stop wasting money. Don't use the TID money for a bogus scheme to study affordable housing. Actually make housing more affordable right now for the people by returning that money to us. Let us use it on a road project instead of taking debt out. So that's an easy affordability win for our residents immediately. We don't have to do a study. We don't have to spend $80,000 to hire an engineer to study affordable housing. We can make housing affordable immediately by returning that money to the folks.
That's fantastic. No, I know it's definitely from the biggest races in the country and in the state to, down to city races like this. Affordable housing is definitely a top concern. Affordability is a big concern. So looking at your endorsement list, you have an incredible list of people. You've got 3 former mayors, I believe, several current and former aldermen, lot of neighboring communities as well. Can you just talk about some of those people that have stepped up to back your campaign and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to one of those core little slogans is experienced. It's not just the years I've spent on council and, 12 years on council, 5 years as council president, but during that time, I didn't just, take votes and go home. I developed relationships with people from, County Executive Paul Farrow to neighboring community to all the aldermen that have been on council over the years. 3 former mayors are currently endorsing me. 12 past and current aldermen on council that I've either served with or currently serve with, along with other folks like our district attorney, Barb Dietrich, our state representative, and my regular folks and neighbors and friends who support my vision for a brighter future and a positive unifying vision, right? We can do this together. We can make the area stronger. And part of that is creating those relationships. And I haven't just sat on my hands, for 12 years and done nothing. I've created those relationships. I meet people. I talk about ideas and really engage on these important topics. And I think that's part of our jobs. And that's why you see an endorsement list that has over 100 folks on it.
That's amazing. That really, again, speaks to your talent and your dedication as a public servant. So, Matt, anything else before we break into our 3 questions that we ask every person on the show?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of ground. I just, our city needs, I think, consistent conservative leadership in the future. I want a place that my kids want to live. I want a place that's strong, safe, and vibrant. And I think I can bring that vision to Oconomowoc. So
awesome. So, all right, Matt, we asked.
These are the kind of fun questions.
Yes, these are 3 questions that we've asked every person who's come on the show. So the first one is, if you could pick one iconic spot, whether it's a supper club, a brewery, or a Packers tailgate, where you could hold a voter rally, where would it be? What would it look like? And what are you talking to voters about?
I was kind of thinking about this. I've lived in this area my entire life. I think one of the coolest spots in our area is the Dockhound Stadium. So I think if I were to do an event at the Dockhound Stadium, that'd be awesome. Get a local band to play 80s and 90s hits like Breaking Cadence, and just jam out, grill, eat brats from Pernitz, do some cool local stuff, and then have all friends and neighbors come in and talk about the things that matter to them, in the community, things that affect their daily lives. I mean, that would be an ideal. And take questions. I'm never afraid to answer a question, and I'll ask tough questions of folks, and that would be an ideal, kind of campaign event, I think.
Fantastic. All right. So, second question: growing up or serving in Wisconsin, what's one lesson you've taken from the state? Whether it's a family farm, a small town festival, hunting trip, what's something that shapes your conservative approach to leadership?
I think I have to kind of go back to something you talked about at the very beginning, and I've mentioned briefly, was my time as a volunteer firefighter and EMT. And I volunteered in a rural department, and it wasn't, always the best funded. And I think, one, stepping up to lead, right? So, I was 18, 19, 20 when I was doing that job, and getting called out at 2 a.m. And I think that really kind of drove my passion for public service. And also knowing that, if I don't step up, maybe somebody else won't. If I'm not at that call at 2 a.m, who else will go? Who else will do it? And I also think that, the other part of that is just seeing how we can, as a city of Oconomowoc, get behind our fire EMS, really support them with strong budgets, smart budgeting, fiscally conservative, spending. And, I think that probably was one of the biggest drivers, is just always trying to get out there and volunteer my time, give my time to the community in whatever capacity I was capable of at the time.
Awesome. Well, final question. You're mayor, and on day one, you get to wave a magic wand to set a policy or maybe roll back a progressive policy in the city. And this is without worrying about getting the votes on the council or anything. So if you could roll back or set a day one policy, what would it be?
Absolute 100% forever. And the state has talked about this forever moratorium on a wheel tax. I think a wheel tax is one of the most regressive taxes that can be levied against people. It affects hardworking families the most. So if I could wave that magic wand, it would be to disallow that ever from happening in our communities. I think it's a very damaging tax. It hurts people that have to drive cars a lot. It hurts folks that are on fixed incomes significantly. And for people that are already, a lot of folks are tight on cash or are working day to day to pay their bills. That's a devastating tax on people. So that would be my magic wand, is just never let it happen.
All right. And then one final question. Where can folks go to learn more about your campaign, learn more about you?
Rosekforthecity.com is my website. You can also, from the website, go to my Facebook page as well, which is a great avenue to learn where to early vote. Early voting started on March 24th, which was Tuesday. It goes till April 3rd on Friday. We actually, in Oconomowoc 2 years ago, I pushed for extended hours for early voting. So we don't on most days end just at 4:30 because a lot of people, especially our law enforcement and fire folks, they have alternative work schedules. So a lot of days you can vote till 5:30 or 6 or 6:30, giving people just a little bit more opportunity to vote. So get out and vote. And then April 7th is the election.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, look forward to seeing you as mayor. Maybe we can have that campaign rally at the new Dock Hounds dive bar space, and look forward to celebrating your election.
For sure. That would be awesome. Thanks,
right.
Justin.
Fantastic. Thank you.